Hi everybody, I hope that you're all doing really well. So today you may notice that I am back in my home bedroom, back at my parents' house, and back with lovely books. I know every time that I come here I end up having like an emotional breakdown about how much I love my bookshelves and how much I miss them, especially now that I have moved into a smaller room which has much less room for books. It just makes me so sad. But I came home for Christmas and I brought basically an entire year of reading with me, but had to have an open, honest reflection about the amount of bookshelves that I do have, the amount of space that I do have, and we are coming to the point where I am a little over capacity in terms of what my bookcases can manage at home. I've previously been very much like, no, I want to hold on to every book that I read, even if I don't like it. And I knew this for a fact, that it's not the most sensible approach to take. Why would you want to hold on to books that you just don't like? I think it's very much like the history nerd, archive lover part of my brain that is just like, no, keep everything. I want this to be a shrine to my reading. But it's just not very practical. I have done one other unhaul on this channel back when I started it. I think I got rid of about 20 books at that point, but this is going to be a lot bigger. Whilst I wasn't very well, I did go through my bookshelves and I did a big unhaul. I've got all of those books currently at my feet right now. And with that book haul, I did a big reorganization of my bookshelves. And I think I've got close to about 100 books that I'm going to be unhauling. Most of them do have new homes that they will be going to. I have reached out to quite a few of my friends to ask if they would like any. If I don't find recipients for the rest of the books that I currently have unclaimed, they will be going either to my local library. I have sent a few books to them in the past and they've always been really delighted to get any new books. So all of these will be going to new homes, and I am just going to go through all of the books that I am going to be unhauling. Obviously, because there are so many, I'm not going to be going into deep detail on all of them. I am also trying to keep them in order of who I'm going to be sending them to. So that will be the vague order, even though I'm not necessarily going to be talking about who I'm going to be sending to because you don't know these people. First off, we had to remove this post by Hannah Bervowitz. Thought this was okay, interesting concept, just not for me. The Haunting Season, Ghostly Tales for Long Nights by a bunch of different historical fiction authors. This I picked up for a book club, but I just didn't really get on board with it. Norse Mythology by Neil Gaiman. I do absolutely love this book, but I do have another copy of this in the white colourway, so I don't need 2 copies. Once Upon a River by Diane Setterfield. I have read 3 Diane Setterfield books and none of them I've particularly enjoyed, so I am going to be unhauling her. One recipient of my books that I am going to mention, because you know him, is Kieran over at KD Books. I have 3 Ernest Hemingway books that I'm going to be sending to him: The Snows of Kilimanjaro, The Old Man in the Sea, and Fiesta, The Sun Also Rises. I'm just not really a Hemingway fan. Gachar Gachar by Vivek Schomburg, and The Road by Cormac McCarthy, which is one of my most hated books. I do not enjoy this. I think Kieran might actually like it. We tend to have different opinions on books that we read, so very much looking forward to hearing his thoughts on this. Books that I'm going to be giving to my mum is Everything I Know About Love by Dolly Alderton. Hate this book, but I think she might like it. The Girl Who Reads on the Metro by Christine Ferret-Fleury. She read the Read It on the 627, really enjoyed that, so she might also read this. We Are All Completely Beside Ourselves by Karen Joy Fowler. Bit different for her, but I think she might enjoy the twist in this one. The Grace Keepers by Kirsty Logan. Bit of like a fairy tale dystopian twist to this one. Not really my cup of tea. I have mainly been holding on to this because it is such a beautiful book. Just gorgeous end papers, and Under the Dust Jacket is stunning. But that is not a good enough reason to hold on to a book, so this will be going to one of my friends. My next pile is a bunch of books I'm going to be giving to colleagues from work. L'Art de la Simplicity, How to Live More with Less by Dominique Leroux. I have a bunch of books on like simple living and minimalist living, and this is probably one of my least favourites, so I will be passing that on to one of my work colleagues. Expectation by Anna Hope. This Everyman edition of Les Miserables by Victor Hugo. Obviously, I am not getting rid of this because I don't like it. I love Les Mis. However, I do have another edition of this in the Penguin Deluxe Classic, which is a translation that I actually much prefer, and also a cover that I much prefer. This is like the classic Cosette picture, but I don't need 2 massive over 1,000-page books. The Lock-In by Phoebe Luckhurst. A Spool of Blue Thread by Anne Tyler. Purple Hibiscus by Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie. Fox 8 by George Saunders. Crying in H-Mart by Michelle Zauner. This is an interesting memoir, but I'm probably not going to pick this up again. Piranesi by Susanna Clarke. Hated this book. Don't get why this won the Women's Prize, but The 13th Tale by Diane Setterfield. Again, just not really getting on board with her writing. The Master of Petersburg by J.M. Coetzee, and The 4-Hour Workweek by Tim Ferriss. I don't even know why I have a copy of this, to be honest. The Worst Thing About My Sister by Jacqueline Wilson. This is just like a little short story by Jacqueline Wilson. Don't have an emotional attachment to this one. I got this free with a Jacqueline Wilson magazine that I read back when we did Wilsathon last year. So this can just go to a charity shop. This Heinemann Shakespeare copy of Macbeth. I recently bought a Pelican edition of Macbeth from one of my work colleagues, so I do not need this copy. Rebecca by Daphne du Maurier. I wasn't a massive fan of Rebecca, and I think if this was a more beautiful edition, then I might be tempted to hold on to it, but does nothing for me. The screenplay for Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them by J.K. Rowling. Obviously, the original series was a massive part of my childhood. I still very much love it, even though I don't love the author, but I have no emotional attachment to Fantastic Beasts. I really do not like the series. The first one is okay, the second one is actively terrible, and the third one I didn't even bother watching, so I don't need to hold on to this. To one of my new housemates who also really enjoys reading, I am going to be sending The Sense of an Ending by Julian Barnes and 10 minutes 38 seconds in the Strange World by Alicia Fack. Hopefully she enjoys them. To another one of my friends, I am going to be sending all of my white Penguin Modern Classics, the white Penguin Modern Classics and the red Vintage Spines. Something about those books just never does it for me. I never end up really enjoying them. So she's going to be getting all of my John Steinbeck books. For me, Steinbeck is perfectly fine, but just not an author that I gravitate too much towards. Glad that I read, don't need to read again. So we have Cannery Row, The Red Pony, The Pearl and East of Eden. I have kept Of Mice and Men because that's probably my favourite, but I don't need to hold on to these. The Trial by Franz Kafka. I remember quite liking this, but not enough to keep it. And then On the Road by Jack Kerouac. I don't need this in my life. Ugh. Gather Together in My Name by Maya Angelou. A Girl is a Half-Formed Thing by Emma McBride. Do not enjoy this writing style. Burnt Sugar by Avni Doshi. As much as I can hear Kieran screaming at me for sending this along, I feel like my friend is going to enjoy this a lot more than I did. All the Light We Cannot See by Anthony Doerr. The Power by Naomi Alderman. Earthlings by Sayaka Murata. This was actively weird. And then The Song of Achilles by Madeline Miller. Do not scream at me. I know, I love this book. The only reason I'm passing on this one is because I do have the gorgeous limited edition hardback book. I'm holding on to this one. I don't need to keep this one. And hopefully I can spread the love about this book. My sister wanted in on the unhauling books, but she wasn't quite sure what books to ask for, so I have put a little pile together. First off, we have The Shock of the Fall by Nathan Filer, account of the young boy's mental health. So I think my sister will be really interested in this one. It's something that she is very passionate about. The Unlikely Pilgrimage of Harold Fry by Rachel Joyce. I believe that there is a movie of this coming out, so she might enjoy this one. Just So Stories by Rudyard Kipling. I do believe that this actually was one of her books, and so passing it back to her. And then Elizabeth is Missing by Emma Healy. Yeah, I just think she'll enjoy this one. One of my friends requested The Boy in the Striped Pyjamas by John Boyne, and then she asked me to send another recommendation to her. One I think that she might enjoy is Scenes of a Graphic Nature by Caroline Donahue. And then I have a bunch of books that I'm sending to my musical theatre society friends. The Familiars by Stacey Halls, Home Fire by Camilla Shamsi, The Declaration Trilogy by Gemma Malley, as well as this Gryffindor edition of Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone. Once again, I do have the original books. I don't need to hold on to this. Bone China by Laura Purcell, The White Queen by Philippa Gregory, Eleanor and Park by Rainbow Rowell, The Night Circus by Erin Morgenstern, and The Bone Season by Samantha Shannon. Three Things About Elsie by Joanna Cannon. I have mainly been holding on to this because I love the design of this. I love Battenberg, and this just, it makes me just want to eat it. But I didn't really enjoy the book so much, so happy to pass it on. Shuggy Bane by Douglas Stewart. This is a brilliant book, but it just wasn't really for me, so I want to give it to somebody else to enjoy it a lot more than I did. Red, White and Royal Blue by Casey McQuiston. Once again, I love this book. I sing this book's praises all the time. I did, however, recently get a gorgeous edition of it, so I don't need to hold on to this one. The Ocean at the End of the Lane by Neil Gaiman, and Names for the Sea by Sarah Moss. And now we are currently hitting upon the books that are currently unclaimed. If I can't find homes for these books in the next few days, then I will be sending them either to the library or to the charity shop. The Wicked Cometh by Sarah Carlin, Half of the Yellow Sun and Americana by Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie. I tend to like their non-fiction writing, but I'm not really a big fan of the fiction. Exquisite Cadavers by Mina Kandasamy. I love When I Hit You, but I remember reading this one and it just didn't leave much of an impression on me. I can pass it on. Stargirl by Jory Spinelli. Hate this book. The Princess Saves Herself in this one by Amanda Lovelace. I was reading this because it was recommended after I really enjoyed Milk and Honey. I know a lot of people do not like Ruby Kaur. I really enjoy her. This one is like the worst parts of Ruby Kaur in one book. I just actively dislike this. Excellent Women by Barbara Pym. I went on a bit of a kick of reading Barbara Pym because I really thought she was going to be an author that I enjoyed, and I didn't. So this can go. The Intoxicating Mr. Lavelle by Neil Blackmore. I hated this book. This was one of my least favourite books of this year. Angelica Frankenstein Makes Her Match by Sally Thorne. Also hated this book. And the last Diane Setterfield book was Bellman and Black. On the Other Side by Carrie Hope Fletcher, Spring Garden by Tomoka Shibasaki, The Reader on the 627 by Jean-Paul Dudou-Laurent, I Am the Messenger by Marcus Zuzak. As I say, I love The Book Thief, but this just didn't really do much for me. How to Build a Girl by Caitlin Moran. I remember really enjoying this at the time, back in 2014, but I've not gone back to it and I don't think I will. A Christmas Carol by Charles Dickens, another book where I do have a more beautiful copy of this. This was the first one that I read. I don't need to hold on to this one. Margaret the First by Danielle Dutton, Landline by Rainbow Rowell, Take Courage, Anne Bronte and the Art of Life by Samantha Ellis. I really didn't like this one. Birthday Girl by Haruki Murakami. I remember quite enjoying this, but I don't need to hold on to it. Miss Pettigrew Lives for a Day by Winifred Watson. I read this back in 2020. I know so many people sing the praises of this, but I really didn't get on board with it. Would be interested in seeing the film though. How to Be a Study Ninja by Graham Alcott. I also have How to Be a Productivity Ninja, which I think is just going to be a lot more relevant for my life, but this was good for when I went back to uni. Tea is So Intoxicating by Mary Essex, as well as Father by Elizabeth von Arnhem. Both of these are part of the British Library Women Writers collection, which I thought I was going to be so obsessed with this year, and just neither of these did anything for me, which is such a shame because I love the title of this book. Attachments by Rainbow Rowell. Love Voltaires Apart by Julia Eidelman, A Philosopher's Guide to Relationships. I remember really enjoying this one, but I don't need to hold on to it. Summer by Edith Wharton. Small Steps by Louis Satcher, which is the sequel to Holes. I remember enjoying it, but it's not going to be one that I go back to. And The Enchanted April by Elizabeth von Arnhem. Getting into the last few books now, we have Half Bad by Sally Green. This was another one that I read back in 2014 when I was getting back into reading. I remember I quite enjoyed this, but this really isn't my typical genre. I think it's kind of dystopian-y, a little bit sci-fi, I can't remember really. It's fine, but I'm never going to continue with the series. The Maldives Shark by Herman Melville. What a weird little book. All This Has Nothing to Do with Me by Monica Cibolo. This is one that I often see when I'm looking for like the worst rated books that I've read on Goodreads. I think this has like a 2.4 rating. I don't think it's actually that bad. I feel like I quite enjoyed it when I was reading it, but it was basically like a 3-star. It was not fantastic and I don't need to hold on to it. The Forward Book of Poetry 2018. I picked this up when I was trying to get into poetry, and I think I just learned I don't need to experiment in this kind of way. I'm much better off like picking up a collection from one author rather than having a collection with like one poem from lots of different authors, many of whom I may not really like the style of. And then the last book that I'm showing you today is Swimmer Among the Stars by Kanish Tharoor. A really beautiful short story collection, to which I think I enjoyed the first couple of stories in here, but the rest just didn't make much of an impact on me. I'm not really a big short story collection reader. And I think those are all of the books that I have to unhaul. So that's been a really good exercise in just downsizing a little bit of my collection. Obviously I do have many a bookcase, and I think I'm always going to have lots and lots of books, but I don't need to hold on to quite as many as I seem to think I do. I'm sure that this time next year I'll be doing the exact same thing, going through like my year of reading and just kind of pruning out the books that I don't need to have in my permanent collection. And yeah, I'm really enjoying how my bookshelves are looking now. Do let me know, are you somebody who likes to unhaul quite frequently? Does it feel quite relieving when you do? I'd love to hear from you. I hope you're having a fantastic day, and I look forward to talking to you again soon. Thanks. Bye.